NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has officially informed all 30 general managers that the league plans to implement significant rule changes to curb tanking starting in the 2026-27 season. During a high-level meeting, Silver delivered a stern message to team executives emphasizing that the race to the bottom has reached an unacceptable level and undermines the league competitive integrity. So that is some tough news ahead as well too. And a couple things that he kind of pointed out that you kind of sent to me. First round picks can be protected only top 4 or top 14 plus. Lottery odds freeze at the trade deadline or a later date. No longer allowing a team to pick top 4 in a consecutive years and or after consecutive bottom 3 finishes. Teams can't pick top 4 the year after making conference finals. Lottery odds allocated based on 2-year records. Lottery extended to include all playing teams and flattened odds for all lottery teams. So that's some of the concepts that they're kind of thinking about. Obviously, you kind of brought this up, but what are your thoughts on all this, man?
Um, I think my biggest takeaway from it was that the Jazz did this. The Jazz really ruined tanking because tanking has just been a part of sports since it's been sports, especially at least since there's been a draft and this is how the draft has been done. I think that the issue became this year when you have teams tanking in game. Like it was one thing to, with your roster, you're tanking or sitting guys out, stuff like that. But the Jazz this year, and I think there was a couple other teams, but it was really mainly the Jazz, um, were
Lord.
we're just not playing guys in the fourth quarter of games, like close games. Their stars, their best players, they weren't playing, and it wasn't one of those because there are circumstances where it's like, oh, we were down and my subs are the ones that put us back in the game. No, it wasn't something like that where it made any type of sense. It was just we're trying to lose this game in game. Like you guys played too well, so we're not going to play our stars. And that to me was like it was just crazy. It really is. Like, people pay to see these games, and it's already one thing if the star players aren't playing, but at least once I'm at the game, I'm expecting to get the best product possible and not to have you, in game changing the outcome like that. So, um, I'm glad that they got fined. I'm glad that there are some things being discussed. I don't really know if I agree with a lot of those measures, though. I think it's tough to try and curb it entirely, especially, the last time they tried to curb it was when they changed the odds basically and made it so, you know, stuff like where the Hawks just ended up with the number one pick, even though they were like a play-in team. They made it so, the worst team didn't have necessarily the best odds. They kind of flattened it. And I actually don't think that's been a good thing. I think the teams are still tanking the exact same, but now you have it where bad teams aren't getting rewarded with good picks. Like the Pistons are in a perfect example. We got lucky because we were able to get Cade with one of those number ones. But the next 2 years, they gave us back-to-back number 5 overall picks. And it's just, again, we got lucky. Cade was able to carry us and we built a decent roster, but imagine if we had been able to get, the number 2 or number 3 in some of these other drafts, like we could have Chet and some of these other players. So I just think that it's hurt a lot of teams way more. And they're also the thing that's tough is there are some teams where it's like we're not necessarily trying to tank, we just suck. Like the Kings at this point in the season, yes, they shut everybody down. They're trying to tank. But up until last month, the Kings were playing all their best players. Everybody who was available was playing, and they just were terrible. So I think it's like also sucks because you have to try and mitigate that as well of like, well, this team isn't necessarily trying to tank, they just suck. So it should it doesn't make sense to try and take away back-to-back top 4 picks from them because it's not like they went out there and was like, like these niggas just can't hoop. This is just really what it is. And then there's also like the injury part of it. Like they said something where if you make the conference finals that you can't get a top 4 pick the next year. And it's like, to me that seems very aimed at the Pacers, where it's like, yo, our best player has been out. They were playing all of their other guys. It wasn't like they were sitting guys at any point in time. It wasn't like they were telling guys not to shoot. Like they were playing everybody on their roster. They just sucked this year. Like that's is what it is. And the exact same thing happened with the Spurs and Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Like David Robinson was injured for the whole year. They were bad. They got Tim Duncan and they went on to be a powerhouse the next couple of years. Like, and I know that that was good for the league. I know the Spurs dynasty was a good thing for the league. So I just think that they need to try and like curb this while also not penalizing teams that are in circumstances that are a little bit beyond their control.
Hmm. Do you think there's a little bit of an overreaction for this particular upcoming, well, for this year in this upcoming draft because this is supposed to be one of the best draft classes in a while?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, teams are, it's similar to what we saw with Wemby, but again, that wasn't that bad. But you guys literally traded away your best player for some picks. Like that was, but that to me, that's an acceptable level of tanking of like we're planning for the future. But that's what, when it was Wemby's draft, that's what teams were doing was like, okay, we're just trying to get some assets and not have a bunch of great players on our team. It seems like this year, these guys are just, yeah, taking it to another level. So I think, of course, yeah, there is an overreaction with this, but there's going to be good draft classes, and you just can't do this. Like, that's really what it is, point blank, period. Like, again, there's always been tanking, but it becomes a line of like, now at the end of the day, the fans do matter, and now you're really disrespecting the fans.
Yeah, nah, it's disrespecting the fans and the integrity of the game itself. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so, I mean, what would you? I mean, obviously they proposed a couple of things that you don't necessarily agree with, but is there anything that you would propose?
It's tough, honestly. I think I think that's one thing. If you are, what I would have done for the Jazz is taken away a draft pick. Probably not a first round pick. I would start off with like a second round pick, and if you continue to do it, then take a first round pick. I think that finding teams is irrelevant. It doesn't do anything. These guys are billionaires. They don't care at all. It doesn't make them change anything. They just get fined again. So finding players is a little bit different because not everybody's making that much money. But finding these teams, it's whatever. It's not until you actually start taking away assets, taking away picks, other things like that like make a difference. So I think that that really is like, again, you're never going to get rid of tanking completely as long as we're in a sport where you're rewarded for being bad, which is also how it should be. Like the best players shouldn't out of the draft shouldn't just be going to good teams because then bad teams will never be good. Um, but I think that there just needs to be, I think it would be better to just have penalties in place for when things go too far like this.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Okay. Well, like I said, these are just proposals, so I'm excited to not excited, I'm sorry. I'm interested to see, between now and the season actually starts, or when the season ends, going into the off season, what exactly they're gonna kind of put in place to kind of chillax with all this bullshit that's kind of going on, man. But yeah, teams just gotta be competitive, man. Be competitive. Like I said, have some integrity and focus on player development. You know what I'm saying? Obviously small markets are always gonna kind of be at a disadvantage from a free agency standpoint, but there's certain things that you can kind of control, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, we'll see what happens